All right, here we go.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. How are y'all doing? Good. So I am thrilled to welcome everyone today. We are doing a profile author interview with Miss Chelsie Bennett and the honors English class. So 1010 students, welcome Molly McRae and Marquise Baker, and then Jada Wilder and Denzel Wilcox are 1020. So they have been with me for almost a year now. And now we're going to give it over to Miss Bennett and let her welcome all of us, right? She's the main event today, so I want her to introduce herself for a couple of minutes.
Well, hello everyone. Thank y'all for being here with me. I see it as a large opportunity. I'm really glad to be speaking with you all today. My name is Chelsie Bennett. I like to call myself a teacher who decided to write her way of freedom. And I started blogging as a hobby, and I'm really grateful that it's slowly becoming monetized and really opening a door for a new career for me. And I'm really excited to be talking to you all about my work today. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much for blessing us with your presence. And we are all so fortunate, and all the 1010 students who get to watch this and learn from you all are as well. So Jada, I'm going to kick it over to you. Since you are someone who had experience with this last semester, what are profiles, what 1010 students are learning about right now?
Okay, so from my understanding of a profile can be basically a synopsis of a person, place, or event that happened in history, and you kind of just go over the experience and the details of what the event, person, or place is about and what it stands for.
Exactly. And then you and Denzel last semester got the opportunity when we did profiles unit to do kind of like a unique experience, right? Everyone got to pick their own documentary. And so I know you were telling me about an interesting one, Jada, that you're interested in now. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it? It was the slut walk era that you were talking about last week. Oh, I don't know if she froze. It's okay. So Denzel, I know last semester you got to do yours on university. It was about basketball. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yours?
It was football. It was called Last Chance U. And if you're not familiar with Last Chance U, it's about some D1 college athletes that play football. They mess up at their college, like with the law or the justice system, and they get kicked off the team. So they have to go to a JUCO school, which is like a smaller college, to work their way back up to get more D1 offers. And like in season 3, it was kind of like located in a small town called Independence, Kansas. And like their profile, they had like a little parade in their little small town. And that will bring like fans and the players that played on the football team. That just brought people together so they could meet their fans.
That sounded interesting. I know for people who love sport, I am totally ignorant about that. And then Jada, I think you had a Wi-Fi connection a second ago, but do you want to talk about your profile? I know the slut walk era is the one you were saying.
Yes, it was going out for a second. I'm sorry. So I recently had to do a kind of just a summary of what the slut walk was and where it started. So it started in Toronto. The first one was in Toronto, but this specific article was the one in 2008 in South Africa, and it had men and women in it. So it was basically a kind of a protest about how men have this patriarchy mindset to where they feel like they can, I guess, objectify women based off of what they wear, and basically they just wanted to fight against that idea. And they were kind of just going off of this idea of like we should not have to wear, we shouldn't have to cover up. We should just tell men how to act and tell them to stop raping and, stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, that was basically what it was. And it was just kind of fighting for the equality of women. So.
Well, thank y'all for both for your examples. And they did really good last semester when they wrote their own profiles. So now Molly and Marquise are in 1010 this semester, and they just started this Unit 2 profile. So we got to talk about the two different profiles that people can write. So one is just a participant, right? And you might just be helping out, doing something to get like a one-on-one experience, right, with the person. Like today, you all are getting to participate in an interview with Ms. Bennett. And then another type, right, is just an observer. So you might go to a business or to an organization, right, and just observe a person and write about them, right? So it might not be as much of an inside look because you're not necessarily talking to the person. So I'm going to kick it to Molly and Marquise for a second. Are there any types of profiles? I know Molly, you mentioned one last week that you might be interested in watching when y'all get to do your documentary choice of your profile.
Yeah, I know one for sure. I just got done watching a TV show about the Unabomber and serial killer. Oh, I love it so much. I love all those kind of horrifying things.
Mm-hmm. And I know we talked about at the beginning of profile units that just the word profile in general, right? It can have like the criminal aspect to it. People might be profiled, racially profiled, either at the airport, right? Stereotyping them as a terrorist, or when we talked about our Tupac example, right? Like police profiling people on the streets, like walking while black, right? So there can be that way, right? Or there could be a profile that is done from more like a criminal mind, CSI, if someone's missing, or if you're trying to find a serial killer, similar to what Molly was talking about. But then there's profiles, right? Like what we're doing today on a person, place, event, or activity. So Marquise, did you have another type of profile documentary that you might be interested in watching or talking about soon?
Yeah, there's one. I watched it, but I need to watch it again actually. It's James Baldwin, I Am Not Your Negro. That one. I'm rewatching that one. There's some things that I missed, that I'm going back and I'm rewatching. And so I would say that one. And it's he will be profiling America as a whole. Yeah. So I'll say James Baldwin. I am not sure.
I was going to say James Baldwin is always worthy of a reread or a rewatch now that we get the opportunity to see a documentary about him.
Sometimes you can reread it.
All right, so I'm going to pause right there for a second, y'all, and I want you to think, because for your next discussion board, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So for discussion board number 12, you are actually going to get to choose a documentary literally on anything that you can do through free, right? YouTube, through Netflix, through Hulu, through Peacock, anything, right? You could even rent something on Redbox, but it needs to be a documentary. It can be about a person, place, event, or activity. So you might have had something in your watch list, right, that you haven't had time to watch, and now you can say, well, now I have an excuse to watch something for my assignment for class, right? So it might be something about sports. It might be something about a person. It might be about an event, an activity, literally anything that you want to write your profile discussion board about. You're literally going to do a paragraph method, right? Describing why it's important, giving us a quote from the documentary, from one of the speakers or from someone talking about the event or activity. So go ahead and unmute if you feel comfortable, or go ahead and put in the chat, what is some documentary about a person, place, event, or activity that you've either been wanting to watch or that you now are going to have to go do some research and go find something to watch. You can talk about one you know the title of, or you can talk about like a person, place, event, or activity that you're interested in learning or researching or watching more about. Go ahead and put that in the chat or unmute and let us know. I know some people are thinking. You might have to go back to your Netflix list or go to YouTube and see something you maybe bookmarked to watch later, something you're interested in, you've been reading about or learned about in a psychology class, or something you just want to learn more about. All right, see some people in the chat. Let's see what we got. The Last Dance. Okay. Is that the one about Michael Jordan?
Yeah.
Yeah. daddy's little girls, how hard it is to get full custody of your kids as a father. Very interesting, Robert. Yeah, so there's a huge variety, right? When it's people, place, event, or activity, right? It's like such a large scope of things that you're able to watch. So I'm specifically giving you this assignment over a weekend, and this is actually spring break for y'all, starts tomorrow. So you'll have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that you can watch something, right? 30, 45 minutes to an hour, watch a documentary, and you're going to write about it, why you're interested in it, why it's important, right? About a person, place, event, or activity. All right, so let's get a few more examples in the chat, or if anyone wants to unmute and tell us something you're interested in, you want to find a documentary on about a person, place, event, or activity. I know I always learn a bunch of random interesting topics when people do this. Oh, that is really kind of crazy, Faith. When you watch that American Murder, The Family Next Door, you're going to be like, oh my gosh. There's another one very similar, called The Cecil Hotel, and it's about something similar that happens, kind of like a mystery, right? Documentary. That one's a little longer. Yep. There's some weird ones, right? Africa, Blood and Guts. Ooh, that sounds interesting, Brian. Fruitvale Station. Oh my God, Robert, that is very, very good. Tragic, but good. All right. So I'm interested in seeing all the different ones that y'all introduced me to, right? Or some that I might have never even thought of, or I have in my list too that I haven't had time to read or watch while grading, or lesson planning. All right, so we're going to continue with the interview. If you haven't put yours in the chat yet, definitely be thinking about that, because you are going to have to do it over this long weekend before Monday's class comes up. But maybe it'll be something fun, right? You can Netflix and chill, get some popcorn, chill on the couch, watch something. Abducted in Plain Sight. Ooh, y'all are interesting class. Ooh, Inbred Family, the Whitakers. That sounds interesting, Zoe. Family by the Ton. Haven't heard of that one yet, Brown. I'm going to have to look that one up. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start us back. Again, be thinking in the chat, add some of yours, right? I can't wait to read and see what y'all are watching.
All right, so now we are going to go to Ms. Bennett's first article. And so we're going to go ahead and open up with the How My Abortions Changed My Life. And I know Marquise is the first one who's going to kick us off, so I'm going to screen share the document. And then you are going to ask Ms. Bennett our first questions for her that you all prepared as journalist interviewers.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yes, sir. Tell me where to go.
You would go down. He was talking about situationships, and I believe the lack of respect. I could not find it.
Okay. You can just ask her your question. I'm sure she'll be able to tell us where it is in the article.
Okay. In the article, you speak on, the lack of respect, the lack of self-love, the lack of really you guys not knowing each other in a situationships and in situationships on how you guys should be together. It shouldn't be friends for benefits. I believe it's actually right.
Yes, I don't want to interrupt you, but yeah,
So,
that's it right there.
with that being stated, my question to you was, it seemed like you weren't in agreement with situationships and you feel like they were a bad thing. So I wanted to ask you, how is that a bad thing? Because in my perspective and my experience being young and dealing with older couples, they learn what they like and what they need in an actual committed relationship through situationships. So my question to you, what is your perspective on situationships and how are they a bad thing?
That's a great question. They aren't a bad thing. So I want to make that clear. And I'm excited that we're doing this. Just as a preface, first of all, I want you all to be really comfortable with me. You can see what I have on. I'm comfortable. And so I want you all to feel comfortable with me. And later, I'm excited to hear about what your different career endeavors are. And so I'm all for the professionalism. I know it goes along with your class and your curriculum, but also I think a big part of professionalism is being yourself too. So just feel comfortable to relax with me. I want to preface with that. But one thing you might not know about me is that there's nothing I hate more in the world, and I don't like using the word hate. There's nothing I hate more than being misunderstood. Oh, it bothers me. But I understand that it happens. So I want to be clear and say that I don't think there's anything wrong with the situationship as long as you're on the same page. I think that friends with benefits, or F buddies, as I like to call them, I've had a lot of those situations, but I think that I'm in a space now where it's just being mindful and being intentional. So I agree with you in your perspective that it does help you to figure out what you want in a long-term commitment. But I think the path that I took, and I think it works for different people, but my path is more so figuring out by mistakes, if you will. And I was just going into it with mindlessly. There was no intention behind it. So I think it's fine to be messing with somebody, to court each other. I think that that's a beautiful thing. I think that dating is amazing. Obviously, I've done a lot of it to have written these, but I'm in a space where I feel like everything should be intentional. Do nothing without intention.
I would also ask, with that being said, so not just in relationships, but in overall life, right? You say make sure you're doing something with intent and without. Make sure you're doing something with intent. I would ask, I'm one of the go with the flow kind of person, personally. So with that being said, I go into things, blindly. And I feel though, as I go into those things blindly, that I find light. I find like, I understand like, I understand the situation. It seems better when I go into it blind. And I say that to say the reason why, because I feel as if the situation makes me grow. It makes other people grow. So my question to you is, what would you say to people who are like me, who go into things blindly and really without intent? You just do it just cause.
I mean, so I'm speaking from experience. I have walked by faith on my foot. It's the only tattoo I have right now. And it says walk by faith. And at the time, I was a very religious person. And that is about walking into things blindly and just trusting. And I still live by that. I trust. But there's a difference in walking into something and saying, hey, what comes of this comes of this. And walking into something and saying, here's what I think I desire. Let me flow and feel my way through that. Because I think that just as important as it is to flow with things, you also have to know what you won't accept. That's not okay, because the flow that I was on was, okay, it's cool, it's fine. It's because I've always been that person where I empathize. And it's like, it's fine. And sometimes it really wasn't fine. So I think it's all about finding the balance. But my advice, or the only thing I would say is, I am you. I feel you and I understand you. So I understand that my words can be cutting, but I'm talking to myself when I'm writing, always.
All right, we're going to pause there for a second, y'all. And I know this article, right, it's some controversial subject matter. It's some stuff. My other class, right, they were asking very like traditional questions at the beginning about like, why would you have an abortion, or why would you have sexual relations with someone that you're not in a long-term relationship with, different things like that. So I want you all to think about now, after you've gotten to kind of be introduced to Miss Bennett a little bit, after you right now have read her article for homework, I want you to think of yourself for a moment and reflect in the chat. Are you more of a situationship, dating, courting type person? Or are you a loner? You're not worried about relationships right now? Or are you more of a long-term relationship person or goal-oriented person? Go ahead and put that in the chat. And let's just kind of see where we are. If you don't feel comfortable putting it publicly, definitely share it privately in the chat. And let's just go ahead and see where we are as a group with this. Thank you, Carol. Okay. I see definitely some people saying long term. Okay. What's other people thinking on this topic? Okay. Right. Got some loners. All right. Not worried about relationships at all right now. Not worried about relationships at all right now, right? Focused on career or school. Okay, loner. Okay, we got some definite, right? A lot of long term at the beginning. Now we have more loner. Way too much stuff going on right now, right? Having to be a loner. All right. So just kind of wanted to see where we were as a class. So now I'm going to go ahead and mark Carol present. Let me stop sharing really quickly for a moment while y'all are talking, putting things in the chat. So did Ahmad ever come in? Or Bianca Curtis? Aaliyah? Okay, I see Carol. What about Diamond or Nyla? Did Camilla come in? And did Paige come in? All right, so we are going to go back to it. And thank y'all for sharing your relational preferences, or right, that you don't have time for any of that right now. Let's continue.
And speaking on like relationships and all that, like towards the bottom of page 5, you say, again, we had no plans of being together, and each of us had endured some type of separation or absence of a parent growing up. So with that, I asked, like, what was your household like growing up as a kid?
My household was very Geminian, and by that, the root of that word is Gemini. So 2 sides, very, I speak a lot about balance now because I lived in 2 different extremes. And so my parents were married when I was born, but they divorced really early. And so I lived in multiple households for most of my childhood. And while I think that it's really helped me in determining my path, I can also see how for many years I sat in the darker side of that and didn't allow myself to flourish. But yeah, my parents had joint custody of me, but along with that, it's just a village of people that I was raised by. And then when I was 14, my father was killed. And so my time split between households then became me just being primarily raised by my mom, who was a single mother, you know, for years anyway, when you're separated. But that's the scope of my household.
Yeah.
So again, since we're talking about families, familial relationships, how that can affect, right, how you determine your own relationships and your own romantic situations, I want y'all to put in the chat as well, since you're getting this vulnerable piece about Miss Bennett from the interviewers. Who were you raised by? Was it a grandmother? Was it a mom and dad? Was it 2 dads? Was it 2 moms? Was it just a mom? Was it a grandma? Go ahead and everybody put that in the chat. Again, you can do it privately or publicly. Because I think that is also perspective, right? Sometimes when you read a piece, you might have a totally different idea about the person, right? Until you hear their context, their background. Okay, we got mom and dad, single mom, mom, dad, just mom, mom, grandma, mom and granny, dad in and out, mom and grandma, dad. All right. Mom, dad was still there to support. Mom and dad. My mom and dad were together. My brother and sister's dad, they had a very, very, very different situation. So I got to see 2 totally different like parenting styles, 2 totally different kind of results of those parenting styles. All right. And I think that shaped as well how my relationships are based on things I heard that my mother accepted or didn't accept, things like that. All right, let's continue, y'all.
Thank you.
How did that play into effect of like why you couldn't really date or like get in relationships.
How did my household play a role in like my relationships?
Separation of absence, like for both of y'all.
So when I speak about the different extremes, and you all may or may not be able to relate, being raised by multiple people, whether you're in a household with mother and grandmother, or mother over here, father over here, or aunt, whomever, you're raised by different personalities. And often when I speak to people who have been raised with both parents in the household, we can always pinpoint which parent is stricter, which parent is more lenient. But somehow in the same household, there's that balance there. Whereas when I was with my dad, it was much more, for lack of better terms, free. And neither is bad, but much more disciplined here in my mother's home. And so I think that separation, I hate to say abandonment, but I think that part of that is abandonment issues because my father did die so unexpectedly. So I was preparing to go to his house. And so it's just that abandonment, that lack of commitment. So many of those things play into how we interact in our everyday lives and really in every relationship, I believe.
All right, thank you so much. That is a segue sort of to the next discussion that Jada wanted to ask you. So I'm going to scroll down, Jada. You said it was around page 6 and 7 about caution, boundaries,
Yes.
types of relationships. Okay, so I'm going to let you take it away. You can tell me if I need to go down or.
It should be like 3 under your pain in the hands of the wrong people.
All right.
So scroll down a little bit more. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So my question with this section was okay, I understand like the trauma with, the friends and like how they kind of reacted to your, like what you were going through. It wasn't what you expected. So how did this situation, how did you go through your next friendships or the friendships that you kindled after that? How did you have more caution, or did you have more caution when you entered those friendships and relationships based off of this experience with those friends?
So it's really interesting. I just published this a year ago, just to be clear. Published this a year ago. The actual events took place in 2017. And so we're now almost 4 years out. That's wild. Almost 4 years out from the situation. But until I published this last year, these people were still in my lives. And this, honestly, me expressing my truth was what forced me out of those relationships. I forgive to a fault, I think that some people would say. And so I finally, and mind you, this situation I was able to talk about with friends before and just say like, I was able to confront them about everything that went down, and we were able to talk about it. And they said, well, it wasn't like, essentially they were saying that it wasn't malicious intent behind it. I forgave the situation, I let it go. But when I wrote this, the boundaries that I should have had in place then, I was kind of forced into. And so I will say that, and I think your question is kind of stemming around boundaries and like how to create them with friendships and relationships.
Yes, ma'am.
It's tough. I'm not going to sit here and I don't have any lies for you if you can't tell. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. Creating boundaries has been really tough for me because I do feel and I empathize, and I often treat others how I want to be treated. And again, some people can look at that to a fault, but I'm realizing that as I progress, it's necessary And it's really one of those things where, and kind of like Marquise, that's correct. What's her name? Like you were saying, the flowing with things. So my intention in writing this was, I just need to get out how I feel because I'm a thinking person. I'm in my head constantly. Very bright, very smart. I've always been praised for that, but I can be really detached when it comes to emotions. And so this and my writing endeavors is really me being able to dive into what's going on the inside and really being able to process these things for me and, you know, come out on the other side to now help other people get there. So I think that many of my boundaries have been forced. But because they have been forced in this way, now I'm really intentional about creating them, and not just with other people, but with myself. Creating the boundaries with yourself are most important because however you treat yourself and however you see yourself sets the precedence for those other relationships.
Right, so we are going to pause there for a second, y'all, of my live class, and I want to ask you the same kind of question. So are there boundaries that you have had to create with other individuals, whether it's a friendship, whether it's friends, whether it's family members, or yourself, or have other people had to create boundaries against or for you because perhaps, right, you all had a toxic relationship or a situation? Go ahead and think of that for a moment and put that in the chat. Or think about, do I need to create some boundaries in my life with people, with myself, with situations I am inside right now that might be toxic or unsafe or unhealthy for me?
When you say boundaries, what do you mean?
So have you had either like a confrontation with someone where you had to say, oh, I can't be around them anymore, or I'm going to have to take a break from this person or this situation because it has become toxic or it has become unhealthy for us to be around each other?
Yes, I had.
Okay, can you give us a little bit of details? And again, thank you, Daniel, for sharing. Everybody else, go ahead and put a situation you're thinking of, or a person or a relationship where you've had to create a boundary in your life in the chat. Go ahead, Daniel.
Well, my best friend, like we knew each other for 8-9 years, but like the 2 last years, he started to have other relationships and he was changing. So it wasn't the person that I knew. And he started like doing things for myself that I got damaged. So I decided to cut that relationship because this friend is not good for myself.
Okay. And I like that word you said, right? Sometimes we can get damaged, right? Sometimes we can have like this relationship that you thought it was like a friendship that was going to last forever, a really long friendship, like Daniel said, 8 or 9 years. But then something happens, right? They or you change, evolve, devolve, right? And you're like, I cannot be with them anymore. I can't be around them because it's no longer healthy. It's no longer serving me. And it's not a selfish thing. I think some people think like, oh, it's selfish if I cut somebody off or if I don't talk to them anymore, right? But sometimes it is for your own health, for your own mental stability, right? To not be around people anymore. Anybody else want to unmute and tell us about that? And then everybody else, go ahead and put a situation or a family member or a friendship in the chat of when you have had to cut something off or put a boundary up, or if you have had a boundary put up against yourself, right, from a relationship, whether it's romantic, familial, or friendship.
I had to put up boundaries with one of my coworkers. He kept like messaging me like multiple times a day, and like it was getting really bad to the point where like he was almost harassing me.
Okay. Yeah.
And like he would like come up to me at work and like touch me, and it was really just uncomfortable. So I had to create boundaries with him, and it was a whole big thing. It was awful.
that's like multiple levels, right? Professional boundary, female to male boundary, harassment of whatever form, right? Some other people, right, have put creating moral boundaries. If your ideals don't align with their ideals, right, they won't continue both in platonic or non-sexual, right, or romantic, right? Because if you don't have the same ideals, whether it's career goals, whether it's religion, right? If you don't have those things meshing, then you really don't need to continue the relationship, right? Because you're not serving each other's purposes. You're not moving forward for a purpose with each other. Someone else said creating boundaries with friends when it comes to priorities versus fun. I know that is very difficult, right? Both right now, maybe if somebody doesn't have the same situations, ideals with the pandemic, right? It might be difficult to say, hey, I can't go out, right, with y'all because y'all are not social distancing, or I can't go on this trip with y'all. Or you might be the opposite, right? And you're like, I need social interaction. I'm gonna have to do it safely, but I have to do this. Or it might be, I can't afford to do some of the things you're doing, right? I'm trying to save money for college. I'm trying to focus. I'm trying to study, right? And you're able to do all this fun stuff, and I can't do all those things anymore. Somebody else said, if I notice a toxic trait about a person, then I confront them. I'm usually told it's mean or unfair of me to do things. I think that is very powerful. And if you don't mind me mentioning Brianna, because sometimes, right, if somebody else is uncomfortable, they might call you aggressive or angry, right? But that is usually their own like self-consciousness, right? And so they might think it's mean when you're being blunt or to the point with them, right? But that's what we have to take away from this, right? That it's sometimes for your own health. It's sometimes for your own good. And you can't always worry about everybody else in your family or friendships or relationships, right? Because if you're not pouring into yourself, if you're not taking care of yourself, then you can't be there for another person or multiple people, right? And some people just are not fundamentally healthy for us. And maybe I've always heard about seasons, right? Some people come into your life for a season and they're there to teach you something, or you are there to teach them something, right? Some people are not meant to be with us forever. All right. So thank y'all for being vulnerable and sharing those pieces about boundaries. Let's continue.
Thank you so much. That, again, word self is yet another great transition or segue to something Molly wanted to ask you about a quote that you had about true friends to yourself. So Molly, do you want to let me know where that was or where you need me to go? Oh, I think it's right here. True friend to me.
Yeah. Okay. So the quote is, but at least now my eyes are open. And, I kind of know that you didn't really tell your mom that much about your abortion for about 2 years. And I know that, you sat with her home and filmed there for a while, kind of a quarantine and everything. So I'm just wondering that after up to your mom, if you'll come closer and that maybe that you have found a good friend.
Okay, let me clarify. You said, I think it's going out a little bit. You said after, essentially, how's my relationship with my mom?
Yeah, if you have found a true friend within her too, after opening up about your abortion and being in quarantine with her.
Okay, my mom is my rock. She always has been. Yeah, and you see, that's the one person I get emotional about. My mom is my rock, and she's always been my best friend. I think that because we've dealt with so much together, and a lot of times when you do have those people who you're with, I think sometimes when you're in close proximity, it's hard to separate the love and those strong feelings, because I don't know, I just feel like love is the greatest emotion. I think that when you do things out of love, the impact is amazing, or terrible, depending on, where you're coming from in your gut. But in terms of my relationship with my mom, I think our relationship is always progressing and it's always evolving. But the biggest thing for me has been separating, that's my mom, from, that's a human, that's a woman. And so I understand now why she did what she did. And even if I don't understand all of the way, I can empathize with it because, I mean, even though I had an abortion, you know, it's kind of technically I'd be a single mom right now. And so I've still been able to go through the process with it because even though I don't have a child physically with me, my body went through emotions. And there's a lot I didn't say in this blog. I focused really relationally on, you know, relationally, so with myself and with others, but didn't really dive into what happens to the body and how that transforms you. And so with my mom, number one, she brought me into this world. So even though I express these things and I'm expressing my emotions, it's real to feel things. But at the end of the day, she is my best friend. She brought me here.
Thank you so much. So I know it appears from her blogs, right, that she is a very open, vulnerable person, but I'm glad that she just stated that, right? Because I remember very much so when we both worked together, she's very, very introverted, right, and extroverted with certain people when she's very comfortable, but she is not the type to tell all her business or put it out there, right? So when these things were published, it was like, wow, you know, a lot of people it resonated with. But I wanted to ask you, Ms. Bennett, if you would feel comfortable, the students who are going to get to watch this, right, that are not here with us live, they, I'm sure, might have a bunch of amazing questions they might have for you about your article, How My Abortion Changed My Life. And I was going to let them in the moment right now during the video, if they would want to pause and then come up with a question in the chat that they might want to ask you. And would you mind if I email those to you and you might be able to have time to answer a few of them?
I would love to.
Okay.
I
Well,
would love to.
all right. Well, thank you. And if y'all are watching right now, right, go ahead and pause and think of a question that might have been burning during the interview and reading. All right. So we are coming back. If you were paused and you are asking Ms. Bennett a question, and now we are transitioning to her next reading. We're going to do it live, right? So in class, the 3 things I learned when I got home. All right, so we're going to pause the video so that we all can read this. And now we are back. So, all right. I know that was a very impactful.
So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and we are going to go ahead and pull up the second reading. So let me know at the top, does it say 3 things I learned when I got home? Brianna Holmes, can you see that? Or Jeremiah, Robert, can you see where it says the new title of the article up top that I shared the screen with by Doll?
My screen's frozen.
Okay. Can anyone see it? It says 3 things.
No, I don't see it. It's still on YouTube.
Okay, thank you. Let me reshare again. Thank you for letting me know. I want to make sure we're on the right page. Okay, can y'all see now?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay. So again, the author that you all have been learning from this morning in the interview, Ms. Bennett, this is her second piece that we're reading in class today. And it is called 3 Things I Learned When I Got Home. And it's a guide to facing fears, parents, and pandemics. She published this last summer, right, during the height of the pandemic. And we are still in a pandemic. So it is so crazy. All right, let's go ahead and scroll down. And then Vidal, can you unmute and read the first section for us? It says, after leaving my job.
After leaving my job without a plan, denying countless job offers because they didn't feel like a fit, hustling as a driver from multiple delivery services while building a writing foundation and nearly getting evicted while doing so, I finally decided to surrender to the path of least resistance. Therefore, I am temporarily back at home with my mom during the pandemic.
Thank you. So she said, I am uncomfortable as shit. While I have spent much time toying with whether this level of discomfort says more about me or my environment, the only answer I can come up with is it doesn't matter. Okay, Robert, can you continue right there where it says, I sense something?
Yes. Okay. I sense something. I feel something. The feeling is valid, even if the red of the situation has more depth. It's okay for me to honor that, but I don't have to obsess over the feeling or let it dictate everything I do. You want me to keep going?
Um, yeah, keep going just with the next paragraph.
I've learned multiple times along this journey in some rather pignant ways. Growth is uncomfortable during this transition. It's my job to find the lessons rather than allow my feelings to keep me buried in stagnation. Here's what I've discovered so far.
All right, thank y'all. So we're gonna pause there for the reading for a moment, and I want y'all again in the chat or to unmute. Tell me, like right now and during 2020, this entire year, right? We are a year from when the pandemic in America, at least, was announced, right? It was in other countries, right? Supposedly November, right? We just didn't know about it. It was occurring, right? First cases here in like February. So think about during the pandemic, during quarantine, during coronavirus, what are some journeys or maybe uncomfortable lessons, reflections that you've had? I know a lot of people, right, have struggled financially with the disease themselves, with death, with, losses of jobs, losses of ideals of what you might have thought college was going to be. Go ahead and put in the chat struggles, journeys, things that you've dealt with specifically during this pandemic, specifically during Corona. Maybe positive things, right, that you've learned that you maybe wouldn't have had time to think about had it not been for this. Go ahead and put those reflections in the chat for the next minute.
And you said we could we could unmute, right?
Yeah, you can unmute and just say it too. That's fine. Go ahead, Zoe.
I feel like with the pandemic, like I've learned to save my money and like I've had like a okay college experience. But I feel as a Black person and as a Black woman, like this time has been really uncomfortable for my community. Like so much loss, but like I feel like it's kind of been like a magnifying glass on like systemic racism and like how it's affecting us financially, health wise, and just like police brutality. Like it's been no stop. Like I don't know, it's just been no stop.
Exactly. So I think to what Zoe's point is, right, a lot of people acted as if like racism was new last summer, 2020, right, with George Floyd's murder, with Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery in the spring, right? And then with the case of the gentleman who was watching birds in Central Park, right? And the lady accosted him and called the cops on him and used her white privilege as a white female, right? To just totally, like, she could have destroyed his life, right? Her life ultimately got canceled and different things like that. But there's so much, like you said, a magnifying glass, not just from racial discrimination, but like you said, systemic racism that goes much deeper in our country and globally, right? With people not making the same amount of money, people not having the same opportunities, people not being treated the same in healthcare during the virus. And that is a testament also, right, to why a lot of Black community members do not feel comfortable still taking the vaccine because, right, in Tuskegee experiment, Black people were, right, given diseases, tested upon, different things like that. And so much history, right, is laid there and laid bare now that lots of people didn't have to know about prior because of their own privilege. So thank you, Zoe, for sharing that vulnerably with us. Some other people in the chat said, moving 10 hours away from my family, right? That is a huge just uprooting, right? And not having possibly a stable like system when you're struggling with work or school or possibly loneliness or sickness, struggling with keeping up with classes, right? And doing it all online. I know it is like huge with people, right? With special needs, and not just special needs like with 504 plan or right, if you had something like that in K through 12, but like just literally trying to focus when it's hard, like just seeing black boxes or screens all the time, right, with just a name. I know sometimes y'all get annoyed when I tell y'all to unmute or if I tell y'all to turn your camera on, but it is very difficult, right, going to school or teaching school and not ever seeing another individual, right? Since March, I know I for a year have been all completely online teaching, right? And it is lonely if you're like an extroverted person. Some people, this is like a dream, right? They get to hole up in their house and not talk to people. They're like, yes. but other people it's like a nightmare, right? Or you might be in a toxic relationship or a toxic home life, right? And not feel safe where you are and wish that you could go back with friends or support systems that you can choose. Some other people in the chat said, would people speak up and keep quiet? The difference between, oh yes, the Black Lives Matter protests and the Capitol riot, that's something we're specifically looking at in my 1020 class. They read an article about the differentiation of the treatment at the Capitol protest, both from a racial perspective, but also just from a political perspective, right? Those people on January 6th were treated very, very differently than people who go to the Capitol all the time, right? And protest for Black Lives Matter, for indigenous rights, for medical and like rights for people who have disabilities, right? We read an entire article about that in that class, but definitely agree with that. So Faith said, once I got to school, we got in classes, I struggled and still struggle with finding motivation. I get that, Faith, to do the work because I feel like we're just going in circles and it's the same thing every day. I hate that, yeah. Because you don't have that interaction piece, right? Or you don't have extracurriculars, or if you did, right, they might get canceled because somebody contracted COVID on band or dance line, or you can't do your fraternity, sorority, perhaps things you had signed up for scholarships, stuff like that, right? So, and I know like work that you're having to still do, right? And you might be fearful that you might contract COVID at work, still having to support yourself, right? Not just having the privilege to sit in the dorm, have someone be able to help you finance college is like huge, right? I know I had to work 2 or 3 jobs to pay for my own school and pay off my own student loan. So it wasn't a possibility that if a pandemic had occurred when I was in college, I could not have just not gone to work, right? Like some people are able to do. So I know it is like highly, highly stress inducing, right? And then healthcare, everything, essential workers during all of this, and trying to have some sort of normalcy, mental health is literally a privilege that a lot of people cannot do. All right, so let's continue with the reading. And so it says, fear and love cannot live in harmony. Can we go to Zoe? Can you read for us? It says moving home. Or Daniel, can you read for us where it says moving home?
Yeah, I can read.
Oh, okay. Well, you go ahead and read the first paragraph, and then Daniel, you continue where she stops, okay?
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Moving home helped me realize I've been fearful of unleashing certain parts of me and walking in my truest expression. For example, while I'm grateful for my foundation, I no longer directly identify as a Christian. Most days I prefer a spliff and a tea over breakfast with coffee. And many of my studies and practices dismantle everything I was raised to believe is the truth.
Thank you. All right, Daniel, go ahead.
Most days I wrestle with whether I should continue to bend who I am out of respect for my mother and her home, or just say fuck it and leave. I'm choosing to leave, but there are parts of me that fear being judged, and I can't help but equate this mindset to the phrase, fear God.
And to that phrase, I finally concluded for what? Back in college, I used to run around singing Erica Campbell's I Love God with my roommate. While those antics were partially fun and games, I'm grateful for the unconscious programming of that incantation. Our exchanges with God should be rooted in love rather than structured to incite fear. Not every experience is meant to bring happiness, nor will all of our actions be liked and celebrated. But even amidst struggle and destruction, love is at the center. I know my mother loves me just as God does, and if we are made in his image, then God is very much a woman too. My mother created me, and to some avail still provides for me. She birthed me into this earthly realm. Okay, let's go to Brianna Williams. Can you go ahead and start where it says, I know she loves me?
I know she loves me, but just as with God, it may not be as always shown the way that resonates, which is where my hung up previously lay. I internalized her methods and beliefs as a lack of acceptance who I am, when it was equally accurate representation of the pieces of myself I was struggling to accept and birth into the world.
right? If she's loving me in the best way she knows how, but I'm fearing her responses to me while simply being me, the scales are imbalanced. As the soul child in me matures and breaks the codependent chain, she's found another way. She's rebirthed herself and found home inside. So have any of you all felt like that ever? Like you were like the person that raised me, I don't like relate to them anymore, or I had to like think of them as another person rather than a authority figure or someone to fear, right? Have you all dealt with anything like that or are dealing with something like that right now, balancing someone judging you versus loving you, or trying to explain things to them, right, that are uncomfortable, or assuming they think things about you just because you're young? What do y'all think? You can put it in the chat if you don't want to say, or you can unmute and let us know. Sometimes.
Wait, what did you ask? I'm sorry. I
You're
missed
fine.
it.
You're fine. So I'm asking about like relationships with like authority figures. Like, have any of you, as you're growing, right, and maturing as young adults, or maybe you're transitioning to college or a new career, right? Are you either dealing with worrying about other people judging you, or are you dealing with worrying about what your authority figure thinks about your decisions right now, or having to think that what you thought they thought about you, they're not really judging you anymore and you're developing into your own? Is anyone having those experiences, or have you had them in the past?
I honestly struggle with that because like coming up, my relationship with my mom, I never was able to communicate things effectively without her like judging me immediately. So like now my mom like has a psychologist, like my mom goes to therapy and like she knows how to communicate effectively, but like that little girl in me still sees that same mom that she was when I was little. So like she wants, like not that we're having trouble, but like she wants me to communicate and be more open with her now. But like I still, I still remember being yelled at and not being able to communicate certain things. So yeah, and I think that like really affects my relationship with authority. Because I always feel like I have to move 10 steps ahead before I can reveal any motive to anything.
I definitely relate to that. My mom and I still have a struggle relationship. I go to therapy, she does not. And so I, like you said, still have that little girl inside of me, right, that remembers being judged, that remembers being controlled, that remembers all of those psychological aspects, right? And people always assume, or maybe I just did, thought that when you got to be an adult, right, that everything just kind of smooths out and people mature and people communicate effectively. But that, right, we see is not necessarily the case, and there's still struggles, right, and still relationships that you have to really battle with, work with, or perhaps like Daniel and several other people said earlier, right, cut off or say, hey, this is not for me. This is not something I can continue to take along with me in my life because it is toxic. So sometimes those boundaries are painful, right? Because it's someone you really love and you wanted to develop a relationship with, but you know that you can't continue because it's just not healthy. Does anybody else want to share anything like that, or something that you struggle with or continue to deal with or don't know how to deal with right now or have in the past? Okay, I'm not going to force anyone, but if you want to share in the chat privately or publicly, that is fine too. Let's continue with the next part. Radical self-acceptance is key. Faith, can you unmute and read that next part for us?
Which part?
It says, I never felt truly accepted.
I never felt truly accepted by my mom, and therefore I made a habit of hiding details about my life. But in many ways, that means I've been hiding from myself too. For over 2 years, I hid my abortion for fear of her response. And when I finally told her about it, she hit me with, "It may sound crazy, but I figured you did."
Ain't that about a bitch? She didn't approve of my decision, but that's not her purpose in my life, nor is it mine to try and make her approve. Her job is to love me for who I am, and my job is to love her for who she is. From there, we learn to coexist. Love is not perfect, but it is accepting. She still sees me as her daughter and loves me in a way no other human besides me ever will. Before I went looking to her for affirmation, I needed to accept myself and my decision making. The truth is, 3 years ago, I wasn't proud of my decision, even if it was something I knew I wanted to do. Heck, I was even ashamed to consider breaking my lease just 6 months ago, but it was something I knew I had to consider, regardless of how isolated or ridiculed I would be afterward. Brian, can you unmute and read the next part for us? It says, the moment I accepted. Or Brianna Holmes, can you unmute and read the part where it says, the moment I accepted?
The moment I accepted those parts of me, my life began to change and continues to do so with every blank page I fill with the ink stains of my life. Before I'd sit in my feelings and drown in them rather than separate them from my worth and adequacy. From time to time, I still struggle with assuming the way I feel is a direct reflection of something inherently wrong with me, but it's not. Sure, I've got my quirks and I've made mistakes, but others' responses to them are a reflection of their own intricacies.
Thank you. So everyone is a mirror. Be gentle. There are mirrors all around, even in places where we feel more like a spectator in the window. The same way I don't want to be judged, I can't help but wonder if my mother ever feels judged by me. What flows through her flows through me. Even in my righteous individuality, parents carry that weight, whether or not they want to or purposely teach their children to aspire elsewhere. Jeremiah, can you unmute and read where it says growing up? Let's go to Jesse. Jesse, can you unmute where it says growing up and read for us?
Oh, I started reading. I just didn't know I was still on mute. I thought I clicked it. I'm sorry.
You're fine, Jeremiah. Go ahead.
All right. Growing up, I always looked up to my mom, and while I no longer put anyone on a pedestal, for years I looked up to her as someone to embody, as a figure of achievement in this world. And the truth is, she's human. Just like that one ex, whatever we have that didn't meet our expectations at one time, but was immediately canceled.
All right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We're all human. So often we project our fears onto others without trying. I wonder what happened if we each committed to doing the work to face our fears and allow others the space to do the same without judgment.
Right. Thank you. Every person is operating from their level of understanding. And as long as we focus on the practices that promote ours rather than ridicule others for theirs, I have a feeling we'll be all right. The final takeaways. As a child, I took being grounded as a punishment. Now, amid a personal and societal rebirth, I better understand the purpose of grounding. It allows us to focus on what we've been neglecting in exchange for immediate gratification. It seeks to slow us down, bring us back into the present moment, and remind us who we were at the core when we still abided by a street-like curfew. You know, kind of like the one the government has been in moving along. Being back at home has taught me to love where I am and understand that this vast redirection is protection from the dangers of a path I was aimlessly forging. It has taught me how to not fight battles that have already been arranged and won for me. I know who I am, even if they don't. Nija, can you unmute and read where it says love yourself? Bianca Curtis, can you unmute and read the last paragraph for us? Or Vidal, can you unmute and read the last paragraph for us?
Is it love yourself?
Yep, go ahead, go ahead.
When you love yourself, it's only natural for you to spread it. It's the most contagious disease in the world, and it's in rare form. We'll never need a mask or a vaccine for it. That's a discomfort you want to grow in forever.
Thank you. All right, y'all. So let's continue with the end of this interview. I'm gonna reshare the screen again and let's continue.
read and write something very close to home. Right now, it feels like just last summer, right? So many things have changed since 2020. Now it's like 2020 part two, but it has hopefully helped a lot of people have evolutions in their life or come to Jesus or whatever you believe in, right? Moments, reflection. And I know this piece is huge about reflection. So again, we are still here with Ms. Bennett and our honors English students. And I know Denzel, in the first paragraph, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the next piece, 3 things I learned when I got home. You had a question for Ms. Bennett.
Yeah, the first sentence had caught me. It said, after leaving my job without a plan, denying countless job offers because they didn't feel like a fit. Like, how come you were not able to like keep teaching and write these stories like simultaneously, like until you got recognition for your articles?
The short answer is I just couldn't. And sometimes I wish people would just say that I can't.
Yeah.
I had, like I said, thinking about life very early on, I had always been juggling more so than balancing, juggling many different things. I always had my hand in so many things. I have so many different interests. I am a very go with the flow person, as Marquise is. But essentially leaving my job is without a plan, without another job lined up, is a consequence of that. And so while I'm now in a space where I don't think I've ever been happier, I was crying about it earlier. I don't think I've ever been happier, but also I think the fact that I left after a promotion, so literally like I was moving up, I left on a high note in my job. I think it shows just how much I couldn't. And there are other things that I was dealing with. So mind you, as Ms. Hanson has told you, I'm private. I'm really introverted. So even though when I'm speaking to you, I'm an open book, most of the times if you don't ask, I'm listening to you. You know what I mean? I have those few people who are the safe spaces for me, but I tend to be really introverted and really private, and I speak on things after I process them. And so that's what all of this writing was for me. And now I juggle so many more things, and I still write every day. I write every day. I haven't published in a while, but I'm writing constantly and just allowing that to evolve. But this was me just evolving and expressing my feelings. So a lot of people go to therapy. This was my therapy for myself. Or when people deal with addiction, they have to go to 12-step programs. This was that for myself.
Molly, I know you had on page 3 a question for her. It was around about the part where it said, ain't that about a bench? But I wanted you to elaborate on what part you wanted to ask her.
Okay, yeah, I actually have 2 questions from page 3. One kind of relates to more of coexisting. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about, learning to coexist with your mom. So the quote is at the bottom of page 3. It says, "You didn't approve of my decision, but that's not her purpose in my life, nor is it mine to try and make her approve. Her job is to love me for who I am, and my job is to love her for who she is. From there, we learn to coexist." Now, I know it can kind of be easy to coexist with your mom because she's more accepting to your beliefs and your practices, you know, being a spiritualist. And I know you were a Christian before back in college, and I kind of just want to know if coexisting with your mom and kind of just with society has been any different from when you were a Christian from now, kind of being more of a spiritualist and knowing yourself a little bit better.
Honestly, I don't think that it's any different in people probably perceive me the same way. I perceive myself differently. And I think that's what's been biggest for me. So in this is the section about radical self-acceptance. And so with me being heavy in the church, I used to love going to church. kind of like I love writing in the morning. So I love those practices, and I love and I respect people who are religious. I respect people who are spiritual. I respect people who just love and love peace, because I love all of those things too. But I think that the biggest thing is just the self-awareness now. And I think sometimes when you are, and some people may call it awakening, when you're becoming more woke, and I think people label that differently. I think for me, that kind of started in college because I was able to get away from home and kind of dive into educational research and psychological research. And so it was opening my mind to things that were normal for me at home, and realizing, oh no, this is trauma-based. This is a coping mechanism, Chelsie. This is not healthy. Oh, you're anxious. You're extremely anxious. Different things like that. I think that now, because I'm aware of them, it's just me perceiving myself differently and being able to move through that. But I understand others haven't had the privilege or took the risk like I did, because I don't necessarily think I had the privilege. I didn't have the money saved up to do what I did, but I took the risk of really diving into me. And I've always been really accepting of different beliefs, but I think that's more uncomfortable for other people because I don't fit in boxes. So for me, I don't think that coexisting has been harder. I think that as I'm more comfortable in who I am and everything I believe, because I think that Buddha's great. I think that Jesus is great. I think that whoever you need is great. I think that all of those people existed and they have paved the way for each of us. I have Malcolm X, President Obama, and Martin Luther King on my shirt, and they all have different beliefs, but somehow they have all progressed and provided a route for the different pockets of being African American and what that means. So again, I don't think it's been hard for me to coexist, but I think it's just been hard because the people around me that I wanted to grow with, I think it's kind of hard for them to see the truth sometimes, because if you only have one vision of who a person is, it's tough.
Again, you always say the right word right at the next moment to get us to segue. You said a vision, which kind of transitions us to mirror, which is Jada's next topic. So everyone is a mirror. What did you want to ask Ms. Bennett about that, Jada?
Okay, so my question was mainly about your mom and your relationship with your mom. I know it's kind of similar to Molly's question, but I wanted to specifically ask you if there were any steps for you and your mom to get to the point that y'all are right now, because I know that can be really difficult, especially being at home together all of the time. Is there any tips or anything that you can say that made y'all to get to this point of an acceptance of each other? Yeah, that's basically my question.
I will say that I think my mom has always accepted me. Again, I think it was just me having to process things. And I do have lots of tips for that. So even in thinking about, as Molly said, being a spiritualist, and I don't even like to label myself as that. I don't really like labels. I'm that weird person because I think that we are so much. So when saying that everyone is a mirror, there are pieces of the reason that we're all sitting here together right now. There's a reason. So when I get to ask you all questions about yourselves, I'm sure I'm going to find out why. And even I think about why each of you are asking the questions that you're asking, or why each of you are watching the shows that you watch. Because I know about Last Chance U. I know about Sleptwalk. You know what I mean? The Unabomber. James Baldwin. His picture was right inside my classroom door. His handsomeness. We all are happy. We happen to be sitting here talking about this. So I think that she's always accepted me. Because again, she brought me into the world, so there was some type of acceptance there. And I think that it's tough, number one, because I look like her, but I look like my dad. And even though I lost him, she lost him too. She had him before I did. And regardless of what their relationship status was, there was love there. And so I think that when we both had the transition of living apart to living together, essentially, I think that in this part of my life, I'm able to process all of the feelings that I detached from in high school when that happened. So I do have tips and tricks, but I would love to talk to you personally, especially if that's something, you know, that you want to know. But yes, it's a lot of processing. It's deep-rooted stuff.
Yes, I was going to say, if you are allowed into Miss Bennett's circle, she is a very relationship-driven person. So while she did, right, label herself the only label earlier as introverted, right, she is very, very deep relationally. So Jada, please, she doesn't just say things lightly. If you have those questions, reach out to her because she will definitely speak to you on it and give you, right, beyond just tips. It'll just be like wisdom piled into your lap. Maybe
have a conversation.
Yep. All right. So then, Marquise, we begin with you, sir, and now we are going to let you take us away on final takeaways and a question that you had at the end for Ms. Bennett.
Okay. Before I get to my final question on the final takeaways, especially, I would like to ask. You spoke on peace. You spoke on peace, and you also spoke on fearing God.
All right, everyone. So I'm going to stop sharing. We only have a minute left with class, and I don't want to be disrespectful of anyone's time. The interview was so productive and so good about her reading, and I'm so excited that you all got the opportunity, right, to hear from a local author, to hear an author's actual voice, right, about what they meant about their writing, about the context behind what they were going through during something all of us, right, are pretty much experiencing in different forms and formats with the pandemic. And right, something you might not ever have experienced or might not ever experience with an abortion and familial issues, relationships, situationships. So now I just want to let everyone know, right, that you do have a homework assignment I mentioned earlier that is due before Monday. You all get a little bit of a spring break, right, tomorrow and Friday from TSU. If you have classes Fridays, right, as a freshman, you get a little break there, and everyone gets off tomorrow for Thursday. But your discussion board number 12 hopefully will be something easy. There will be easy points. So if you go in to content, like always, go to unique discussion board number 12 under content, which is under week 8. And all you're going to do is select a documentary from anywhere that you can watch it for free: Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, literally anything. Remember, you're going to pick a person, place, event, or activity, because that is what a profile is, and you are going to write one paragraph about it. So I gave this specifically before a weekend, right? So you had plenty of time to make sure you can watch this. And again, I don't suggest watching an entire series, right? You might binge watch it and not do any of your other homework or get to rest during spring break, but you're just going to watch a documentary about a person, place, event, or activity. And then you're going to use the paragraph method, right, to create a short profile of that activity, place, person, or event. And consider how you can best capture or explain to me and your audience what's special about your subject, right? Why you are actually wanting to watch or read about this. So write a topic sentence like always. Why are you watching this? Why are you wanting to learn about this person, place, event, or activity? Explain, expand. Tell us a little bit more about, right, what you've learned, what you're wanting to learn from it. Give us a quote, what a person says during the documentary, right, about the person, place, event, or activity. Explain why that quote is significant, and then close it out, right, with a transition sentence saying why it was important to you, what you learned about it, what you enjoyed about it. All right, we went over 1 minute, but again, thank you all so much for participating in the interview today. If you would like, right, Miss Bennett's email address, you can ask her questions or reach out to her. I really appreciate all of your vulnerabilities today about a lot of different topics, and I will see you on Monday. And make sure your discussion board number 12 is done and you replied to another student.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
Bye, y'all too. Bye.
Have a good day, Miss Hanson.
You too. Bye, Jesse.